Let's get right into this. Fran,
Yes.
We've been hearing a lot about this connecting the next 3 billion. There's undersea cables, there's data centers, there's power plants. But you've been focusing on, I think, something that gets less attention, which is people. And you started this AI-enabled information and communication technology workforce consortium. I had to read that; it's very long. But this is this effort to train 95 million people over 10 years. And I just want to, tell me about the importance of people in this kind of like AI revolution.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's really all about people. And I think something that's so fascinating is that in the past, when we talk about AI, there's just an assumption that it's about the technology and not about the humans. And what we're finding is that if you architect it this way, AI can humanize the workforce. I believe it can. The AI consortium that you're referring to is really trying to get ahead of how jobs are going to change with the impact of AI. And so what we did was we looked at 47 roles, and we did this with Microsoft, SAP, Google, Accenture, and we basically looked at how will AI impact these jobs. And what we find is that most jobs will be either moderately or significantly impacted, and there's an opportunity for us to make sure our people are ready.
Yeah, and I think when we've talked about upskilling in the past, it's been like, okay, let's teach people how to code. That's really changing now. I mean, because of AI, and
right.
What are those skills? Like, how do you teach someone for this age of really kind of uncertainty around what skills will be needed?
So it's really funny, but I think it's less about the content and more about the frequency of the education. So for us, we go to school, and then you start working and you feel like, oh good, the school part is done. And I think what we have to recognize is the school part is not done. And if you look at even some of the stats from the World Economic Forum, there's a belief that every 2 years roles are going to change so substantially that we're all going to have to train again and again. So I think this is more about the cadence of change around our skills than the content that we need, because it will continue to just evolve.
Yeah, so just keeping people updated with everything that's coming down the pike. And you've also done such interesting work on security. I was reading this report, and it was kind of eye-opening to me that cybersecurity attacks happen with more frequency in Africa than anywhere else in the world, like by this huge margin.
Yeah.
And how does that affect things? Like, why is that so crucial to kind of like take care of, I guess?
Okay, so this is everything. We do have to talk a lot more about cybersecurity, because when we look, as an example, at the GDP for the African continent in 2021, it came down 10% because of cyber crimes. And so that's something that we actually have to get ahead of. And something that I worry about is when we connect the next 3 billion, will they be more vulnerable to cyber attacks? And what are the things that we have to do? And so what we find is there are opportunities from a policy perspective, there are opportunities from an education perspective. Today around the world, there's an estimate that there are 4 million security jobs that are not filled because we don't actually have the talent. And so if we can create an easy path, about 50% of these roles are at the technician level, we can create the talent that can create the security for the next 3 billion.
So it's back to the people. There's also this role of the AI minister that you're seeing popping up in all of these countries. And you've talked to a lot of them. I think you see, are there commonalities between all of them at different countries? Is there a playbook that everyone should be following?
So I think what's happening is around the world, countries are trying to figure out the extent to which they centralize their approach to AI, or whether they have the rest of the ministers, as an example, take on this work. For the ministers that I've talked to, what I find, there's an interesting balance in their focus. One element of the focus is on the digital divide and ensuring that technology, and in particular AI, doesn't leave people further behind. The other element of it is the economic opportunity. And my sense is, I think we always have to look at it that way. I think we have to look at the opportunity and know that the more that we're able to quantify that, the more that we'll be able to really create the case for the education and the inclusion that we want to see as it relates to AI skills.
It's interesting. Topic of diversity here. You've done some really interesting research on, we have issues here in the U.S. with diversity and technology, but I think it's even more pronounced in a lot of African countries. Why is that, and what can we do about it?
So yeah, I think it's something we absolutely have to pay attention to. If you take an area like cybersecurity as an example, in Africa right now, only 9% of the cybersecurity professionals are women. And that number should be so much stronger. And if you think about it, I mentioned that there are 4 million jobs that are open. Imagine if we made a push to get more and more women into those roles. It would be incredibly compelling. Around the world, for the rest of the world, we see about 25%. So there's a huge opportunity for us to focus on women. I think one of the challenging things is that when an environment is such that you don't have a lot of that diversity, it doesn't create the easiest environment for women or for anyone else, whatever diversity you're going after, to really break through. And so what that means is that you just have to put tremendous focus on programs that will help bring people in. And so as an example, we have an AI and cybersecurity edge center that we opened in Nairobi. And the whole point is to showcase the technology, but to also train the talent that wouldn't normally come in so that they can be running the center in the future as well.
There you go. You also, when you're educating people, AI can actually come in handy in this effort, right? We talk a lot about AI actually used in education. What are you finding there? What's working in that world, and what do you like to see in the future?
Yeah, I do think this is going to be an area that we can definitely have some optimism around. And so from a Cisco perspective, we have trained 23.5 million students over the last 25 years. And the students that we train are students that maybe wouldn't normally go to college. Maybe they decided later in life that they wanted to get into technology. And I think that those paths are incredibly important. But when I look at that, we train in one way. I think as we look at AI, there's going to be such an opportunity to meet each of us with the way we want to learn. And I'm incredibly visual, so my training has to be a little bit more hands-on than someone who learns by reading, right? And so AI will give us this capability. What you see a lot of companies doing at this moment is using AI either as a tutor or as a coach. And these are some of the opportunities that will be there that I think will help people as they step into technology as well.
Yeah. I want to ask you one question about Cisco, because you've had this amazing career at this company. Started off in the dot-com boom of the 90s, and I'm sure it's changed so much since you got there. How is AI changing the company, and what's Cisco going to look like in 10, 20 years?
It will have tremendous impact. And I don't know all of you in the audience, but my sense is that AI will have tremendous impact on your companies too. I think we're just going there. From a Cisco perspective, 3 things that I would say. The first is AI will intersect with the entire portfolio. The second thing that I would say is we are going to build technology to help our customers manage workloads as it relates to AI. The third thing that I would say is that every single function in the company, whether it's government affairs, whether it's the people organization, finance, we're going to use AI in very different ways. Now, what's so interesting about your question is that the job that I started Cisco at was actually in our technical contact center. That job isn't going to be around. And already we're managing so many of those cases now via AI. And so it's just a good signal to, I think, what is to come. And what you'll see is other jobs come up in its place, but I think the changes will be significant.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I think we have maybe like one short question left in our strict time frame, but like, what is your, if you could just leave us with like, what's the one, if you could just erase one of the obstacles to this goal of, that we've been talking about, what would it be?
I would say in the 37 seconds that we have, public-private partnerships are so important. I think that companies have to come together in service of outcomes that are meaningful, whether those outcomes are about education, about responsible AI practices that we want to adopt more broadly. I think we need to have more conversation. We have to work harder to make sure that people are not left behind. I think that's very possible. And to recognize there's amazing work that's being done that we can scale.
Thank you so much. It's been really interesting.